Creator. She is an in-demand expert as one of the few people who can not only translate the impact of the digital revolution from Web 2 to Web 3 and its impact on businesses, but also how the metaverse can become the new frontier to create better and more accepting communities. As the founder of the award-winning agency Friends with Holograms, she was a pioneer who created VR training pieces around topics like child abuse, workplace exclusion, mental health, Black maternal mortality, and racial bias for companies like Lowe's, Walmart, PwC, Amazon, Target, and more. Her work was honored as the Best VR AR of 2019 at the Mobile World Congress, at a South by Southwest Innovation Award finalist at South by Southwest, and a top HR product by HR Executive. She is currently working with Meta to help shape strategy around learning and training in the metaverse, and was instrumental in creating What is the Metaverse?, a groundbreaking course that covers all aspects of the metaverse while exploring safety issues, ethical questions, and much more.
Okay. All right, why not? So, like I said, I'm Cortney Harding, and I am here to talk about artificial intelligence, what I call small language models, and I'll talk about that in a second, and basically how we can combine a lot of emerging and new technologies to make our lives a lot easier and better, because we can actually create avatars based on everything that we have written and said and recorded and put out into the world. Those avatars can then essentially do a lot of our work for us, and we can go live our lives and do other things. So this presentation is really about how I plan on making my avatar do all my work. So let's go to the next slide. So like I said, I'm Cortney, and these are some of my avatars. So you'll see this one is my Horizon Worlds avatar. It's pretty good, not perfect. Obviously, I exist below my waist. And then the other one, which is kind of in a weird position leaning back, is my spatial avatar. These are just two examples of the avatars that I use on a pretty regular basis when I am doing work or socializing or hanging out or teaching in the metaverse. So the cool thing with this is, I can be represented in the metaverse, but the downside is that I am the one driving these avatars. So when I am in these spaces, it's me talking, right? So what that means is, as much fun as I'm having, as much as I enjoy it, it is work. It is time that I could be spending doing something else, whatever that something else is, that I'm spending driving my avatar, talking to people, socializing, moving around. So let's go to the next slide. And this is just an example of all of the things that I have said about the metaverse in my life, right? So I've done talks for The Economist about branding, about augmented reality, about social work in VR. So I have all of this content online. I've been working in this space since 2016, right? I've been doing this a long, long time. And consequently, I've written a lot of articles. I've written books. I've done a lot of presentations. I have written blog posts. I've posted on social media. Like, I have generated a ton of content, as have most of us, right? Whether it's because we're experts in a space, whether it's because we're just passionate about something, whether it's just because we like posting on Twitter all the time when we could actually be doing other things, right? Most of us have a pretty broad base of content on the web. The problem is, it just sits there, right? These videos don't have huge counts, I'm not gonna pretend that I'm some person who generates a lot of YouTube traffic, right? I'm not Mr. Beast. But, people do watch these, but they kind of have to come find them, right? If somebody's looking for me to speak at an event, if someone's looking for me to do something, then people come watch this. But overall, these things that I have spent a lot of time and effort generating just sit there. So that's what I want to explore today. How do we change that? And how do we change that for the better? So let's go to the next slide. So what's the current state of affairs right now, right? Avatars exist, obviously, and they can be programmed as chatbots. So there is a way to program an avatar such that it will interact with other avatars using some form of artificial intelligence. However, right, they require scripting. So right now, you can go to one of the many DIY chatbot platforms, and there's a lot of them out there. You can create a chatbot, you can upload it, connect it to your avatar, but you have to write a script, right? You really have to create the content. Now, you could theoretically cut and paste content, but it's not very smart. It's kind of dumb. How many of you have ever dealt with a bank chatbot or a health insurance chatbot, right, where you can clearly tell it's a robot answering, right? It's looking for keywords. It's not really interacting with you. It's certainly not picking up your intent. And it's useful enough in the sense of like, it'll find your records, it'll find your account, it'll ask you basic questions, but it doesn't go any further than that, and so that's where things get challenging and that's where the opportunity lies. So right now we have a lot of large language models, right? I can go online, I can go on ChatGPT and ask it to write a poem about my friend's cat in the style of Edgar Allan Poe, and it will give me something, right? If you teach here, probably some of your students have asked it to write a term paper, and it has spit back something that is probably kind of gibberish, right? It's just starting out, but what it's doing is it's scraping the totality of the internet. It's not being specific, right? And so what I'm interested in is like, how do we get specific about this? So right now, avatars that are not programmed as chatbots have to be self-directed. So again, if I go into the metaverse as my avatar, I have to be the one talking, listening, interacting, all of that stuff. And again, it's a net increase to your quote-unquote work, right? It's an hour that I'm spending working in the metaverse that I could be reading a book, going to dinner with a friend, sleeping, doing whatever else I want to do. So let's go to the next slide. So here's a future state that I'm really interested in making happen. My avatar will be programmed with my entire digital history, and I can let that avatar go into the metaverse and converse with other people and interact with other people without me having to do a thing. I can be hanging out, and my avatar can be working. Let's go to the next slide. Next slide. So again, why, right? This is Huck Finn. Huck Finn famously, convinced everyone else that painting the fence was fun, and then he went and sat under a tree and took a nap while everyone else did the work. Now, what Huck Finn did is kind of funny. It's also, in fact, very exploitative. But the nice thing with this is you're exploiting yourself, right? I'm sending my avatar to do my work, but my avatar's work is based on my own work. So, and of course, avatars are not sentient beings, they're just avatars, so there's no exploitation anywhere. Now, of course, you do need to be direct about the fact that your avatar is programmed as opposed to a live human. I think there are ways to be very clear and upfront about that, so that's a thing that we need to consider. But you can essentially make yourself do all your work without generating extra work for you, right? So the easiest way to sort of think about this is if any of you are older, or near 40s, 50s and up, or you like classic rock radio, you might have heard of a band called Creedence Clearwater Revival. Now, when they signed their first record deal, they did not talk to a lawyer. They just signed the paper, took the money. Well, the band, became a huge success. They broke up. John Fogerty, the lead singer, wanted to go solo. So he recorded a solo album. The label he had been signed to sued him for sounding too much like himself. This is like a famous lawsuit in music history. It's funny, right? It's funny, it's silly. But I think what it goes to show is like you could almost create this avatar in that style where the avatar will sound like you and act like you. But you don't have to worry about that because you're consenting to it. So let's go to the next slide. So again, why do we want to do this? What's interesting about this to us in terms of our workload? So, eventually we're going to spend a lot more time in the metaverse. We're going to be working, we're going to be socializing. It's still pretty niche technology right now, but according to many estimates, it's coming, and it's coming rather quickly. So, we all have jobs. We all do stuff, and a lot of us have jobs where we like some of what we do, and we dislike some of what we do, right? I don't know of anyone on earth who likes every single thing about their job. Everyone has tasks that they do that they don't particularly enjoy, right? So I'll give you an example. I love creating VR, I love creating content, I love executive producing content, I like speaking, I like writing. All of these things I love to do, I'm happy to do them. I don't like filling out spreadsheets. Every time someone sends me an Excel spreadsheet, I die inside just a little bit. Every time someone sends me an Asana link, I die inside just a little bit. And every time I have to go do sales for my agency, I cringe just a little bit because 9 out of the 10 sales calls I do are pointless. It's the 10th that works, but I have to take time and effort and energy with those other 9, right? Now, that's not the best use of my time. The best use of my time is for me to focus on what I'm good at, because that's what gets the results, and let other people do what I'm not good at. But if you run a small business, right, you can't necessarily hire all those people. You have to do these things. What if you could make your avatar do them, right? That's gonna save you time, that's gonna save you money, and then once you've done that, you can focus on doing what you're good at, doing what you enjoy, and then getting out into the world, right? Go fishing, go hiking, go see your friends, go have a life, whatever. So that's what we're really interested in. Next slide. So the other thing we can do is really make things more efficient. Like, no one likes waiting in line. This is terrible. Every time you have to wait in line, that's a failure on someone's part in terms of planning, right? That is a failure of efficiency. So why can't your avatar just do this stuff for you? Now, obviously, your avatar can't, like, go to Trader Joe's and stand in the huge line. Or could they, right? There are ways your avatar, programmed with your knowledge, could actually do your grocery shopping based on everything they know about you, based on the information you fed it. And then your groceries just show up at your house, and cool, you're done. You don't have to go to a store, stand in line, walk around, all of these things that people tend not to enjoy, tend to take up a lot of time, and tend to make us all less efficient, right? AI-powered avatars can really end the concept of time theft. So I'll share a story. My husband got laid off in January from his job, and he was like, okay, I'm gonna file for unemployment. Cool. Well, it turns out during COVID, somebody had stolen his social security number and filed a fraudulent unemployment claim. He didn't know about it for reasons, thank you, New York State. So he spent hours every day on the phone, tracking people down. You know, call this hotline between 2 p.m. and 2:45 p.m. every other Tuesday, and maybe somebody will answer. You know, this is a person who is a relatively senior person at his bank, who was making good money, whose hourly rate was pretty high. All of a sudden, he's less efficient because he's sitting on hold with some department of New York State trying to figure this out. There is no reason his time should be wasted that way. That's absurd, right? This is something his avatar could have very easily done and interacted with an avatar on the other end of the phone, right? And the nice thing about avatars, as opposed to actual humans, there can be an infinite number of them. So all of a sudden, you don't have staffing problems, right? You don't have to outsource, you don't have to worry about any of that. You can just create as many digital avatars, spin them up, pull them down. You don't have to fire them, you don't have to give them health insurance, you don't have to do anything. They can do all the work for you. Now, where that gets interesting, and where you shouldn't be afraid of that, is like, look, the digital avatar at this point will only get you so far. Then you gotta go to the next step. So it's when you go to the next step that a human can come in. So this is not about like destroying every customer service person forever. This is about letting them be good at what they're doing. This is about letting them solve more complex problems, while the easy stuff that they probably don't like solving just gets done automatically. So that's where I really see us going. Let's go to the next slide. Just make sure, okay, I got time. Uh-oh. Maybe this really is the end of the line. All right, here we go. So let's talk about another benefit. Networking stinks, right, for the most part. It can be really fun to meet people in your industry, it can be fun, but a lot of these networking events are just a grind. You wind up talking to people who are perfectly lovely people, but they're not interested in what you're selling, you're not interested in what they're selling, and it sucks up a lot of time and energy, and there's no really good way around it. You have to connect with people, you have to talk to people, but this is like a problem that just doesn't have a solution. So what you could do is this. You could have a virtual networking session where your avatar and other avatars go in, and let's say your avatars talk to other avatars, and like 9 of those conversations will probably go nowhere. Cool, no one's time is wasted. The 10th conversation goes somewhere, amazing. You get a ping that's like, hey, our avatars like swiped right on each other. Let's do an actual phone call. So you've saved tons and tons and tons of time. And again, because your avatar is infinitely replicable, you can be in 50 different networking sessions. Now, there will be a lot of noise and clamor, but again, it kind of doesn't matter because these avatars are just out there in the universe, out there in the digital world, and it doesn't necessarily matter that they're just all going all the time, right? And so this is a way to really narrowcast and a way to really maximize the value of connections that you've made. Now, will it be perfect, perfect all the time? Of course not. But it's going to narrow things down dramatically and make everything more efficient. So let's go, we're almost done. No, other way. Here we go. So let's also talk about emotional labor. There we go. Let's also talk about emotional labor, right? If you've worked a customer service job, and I have, I've worked at coffee shops, I've been a waitress, the amount of smiling you have to do, and oh, I'm getting sexually harassed, but it's okay. Let me take tip, please, right? It sucks. It's terrible. People can be very friendly, but at the end of the day, it's tiring to smile and be peppy after 8 hours on your feet making coffee for people. So what this can do is, again, eliminate the need to do all that emotional labor. Your avatar can be doing it for you. Your avatar can be the one who's smiling and friendly and peppy and out in the world, and I can just be my misanthropic self in my room until something surfaces, and then I can be nice, right? So I think the idea is that people talk about AI disproportionately impacting lower wage workers. And on one hand, maybe that's true, but on the other hand, it can make their lives a lot better. It can strip out a lot of the negativity and let them focus on what they're good at, right? So you don't have to, do all of the niceties and the pleasantries. You can just be good at solving problems, be good at making things, be good at doing things, and the avatar can do the rest for you. So that's where it gets really exciting and beneficial to everyone, right? To every worker, to every person, is that this can be a sea change in how we view work and what we can do with, again, content we have already created, right? We're not stealing anyone else's content. This isn't a copyright issue. This is an issue of us taking our own work and making it better and making it work for us. So again, it's funny for me to say this, right? We don't need to work all the time. I work like 60, 70 hours a week routinely. I run an agency, I consult, I teach, I write, I do all sorts of stuff, and I love it for the most part. But the longer I do it and the older I get, I think more and more about what else could I be doing with my time? Could I be on a hammock, next to a river chilling out? Sure, I might get a little bit bored, but sure, I could do that. I could do all these other things. And I think, as we develop into this sort of next era of work and think about the future of work, we can think about how part of that future is us working less or us working smarter. And obviously a lot of other social things will need to change to make this a reality. We'll need some form of, whether it's universal basic income, whether it's, just some form of government subsidized housing for people who aren't working as much, right? We can rethink work and wages and time. This could be an opportunity for us to fundamentally shift how we think about everything. So that's my sort of optimistic, sort of kooky vision for how all of this could work. I know we've got a couple minutes left, so I'd love to answer any questions. Some of you might think this is, kind of insane, so if you think it is, let me know and we can talk about it. But yeah, anyone have any questions or thoughts? Yeah. Okay.
Who was first? Okay.
Okay. What are the physical world? I was wondering about the physical world.
Okay.
So you mentioned you showed the Trader Joe's picture. You can say you can have your avatar. So you showed the Trader Joe's picture. You say you can have your avatar go do the shopping and then your groceries appear at your door. How did the groceries get sorted to your door?
So, someone would have to do that work, right? So this is not meant to replicate every job that every human does. There will still be somebody who needs to, at least at this point, obviously robotics is moving in a direction where somebody will eventually, robots will eventually do some of this work. Robots will eventually deliver things. So this is not meant to say humans will no longer have to work. This is meant to just sort of say all right, humans can be more efficient about their time and more intentional about their time. And then, it will again create other opportunities for folks who are, in the delivery business or in the sort of sorting and packing business. It will free them up, because let's say you work as a delivery person, right? You go home, this makes your life easier too. You go home after your shift, you don't have to then go to the grocery store, go to the pharmacy. Your avatar can do it for you. So this isn't going to necessarily destroy all jobs, right?
Yeah, so I guess I'm not worried about destroying all jobs. I guess I'm wondering what the emphasis on efficiency does to align the sort of physical human aspects that make, and does training data and does the physical labor of last mile work or these kinds of systems. So I was curious how, I guess how you're thinking about where the physical world shows up in that.
Well, like the physical world still shows up and exists, right? Like your avatar can do the work in the metaverse, but you're still going to the beach, you're still going out with your friends, like you are still existing in the physical world, right? And you're still existing as yourself in the metaverse, not just as your pre-programmed avatar, right? Like if you go to a party with your friends in the metaverse, it can be you, right? The idea of this pre-programmed avatar is really to sort of do the first mile or the first X number of miles, right? The sort of sorting functionality. And then the last mile is the human element. So it's not kind of getting rid of the real world. I don't think we should ever do that. But it's really about kind of maximizing efficiency so that people can spend more time out in the real world doing the things they enjoy, right? And not time like standing in line at the pharmacy because they need to go pick up a prescription or whatever. No one likes that. I mean, maybe people do, I don't.
Yeah, so, sorry, I was just wondering, I was kind of going to ask the same question as you. See, going back to the example of your husband standing in line for the unemployment, how does the avatar know what question to ask?
Well, so, it's using artificial intelligence, so it'll get smarter and smarter the more data it collects and the more data you input, right?
So you put an input into the avatar rather than going straight to the person that you'll talk to?
Well, so there's a couple of things. The first is, you could certainly have a pre-programmed function where it's like, hey, I need to call, people call customer service hotlines for a lot of the same issues, right? Oh, my medical claim got denied. Oh, my bank card got stolen, I need a replacement. Oh, the fraud with the unemployment office, like that happened on a massive scale in New York State, right? And I'm sure other places too. So you could definitely say like, here's the challenge, here's what I'm trying to solve, check those boxes, and then your avatar goes and does it for you. So yeah, it requires like a little bit of setup. And on the other side, right, those pre-programmed avatars know what questions will likely be asked, right? People tend to ask the same questions over and over. There's so much training data out there at this point. Like customer service people could just program that in. And again, if it's the type of thing where the avatars can't solve it for whatever reason, then it gets kicked back to the human. But 90% of the time, it probably can be as simple as like, okay, file this form and we'll get it done type of thing. Anyone else?
Is it on? Yes. Okay. Hi, I'm Ryan. I specialize in avatar research and the future of work. So I think there was a lot of overlap between your talk and what I think about on a daily basis.
Awesome.
So just for the audience, I think that like the way that you're talking about avatars, it's almost like an embodiment of your own personal AI. So you can imagine an embodied AI could take on the role of a robot, being autonomous here in physical space or in the metaverse using your Ready Player Me option or whatever skin you want to throw on and go do those interactions. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on leveraging these personal AIs, even ones that speak, behave, make decisions like you would. I think there's still this bandwidth problem of it has to come back to the source. Your avatar has these discussions, and then you need to then process that data and decide what to do with it. Otherwise, you're maybe creating a higher self that is this oracle of all of you and all of these different experiences, which I think that's super valid. I would want to make, Super Ryan and consult with him and be like, yo, am I like on the place here? But I think it makes us fundamentally question, what role do we then play as the creators of, what could be these super intelligent systems that could surpass ourselves. So my question to you is, do you also see this bandwidth problem? Have you thought about, when you send a million versions of yourself out there and they all report back, what role do you play? And
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you're almost like your own avatar manager, right? So to be clear, the avatar that you have is fed off of your own data, right? So I'm not going out there asking this avatar to be in the style of myself. I'm programming this avatar based on sort of an ever-expanding realm of content that I have created. So, part of it is like, I'm gonna have to keep creating content in order to keep my avatar fed. So that's where I'm gonna have to spend maybe more time. I don't know that the avatars will ever get to sort of this super genius oracle place, although that would be really interesting and cool. But I think the other point is like, yeah, exactly. How do you manage the incoming? How do you manage all the inputs your avatar is giving you? And I think that's where it gets kind of interesting. And I think, we can think about how we report this stuff out, right? So I can program my avatar to say, okay, I only want to be notified about discussions that meet a certain threshold, right? So I'll give you an example. This is a very concrete example. So I run my agency, and every day I am approached by people who are like, yeah, I want to do something in VR. I think it'd be cool for my company. I have this project. Now, the first question I always ask is, okay, how real are you, right? Are you just kind of like, oh, I read a book about VR. I think it's neat, right? That's great, and I'm happy for you. But I have a business to run, I have payroll to make, capitalism, so I can't just spend all my time talking to people about, yeah, isn't this stuff neat, right? I need to know you have a budget, I need to know you have like an RFP, I need to know you have certain things in place. So, right now I kind of have to just be a little bit of a jerk and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I can't talk to people about projects unless there's a budget behind them. However, my avatar could do that work, and the final could be, okay, our avatars talked, there's a 200K budget, I'm making up a number. All right, that's a good budget. Now let's have the humans talk. So it's really like a filtering out mechanism. It's really just sort of like sending everything else to spam in a way. And because it's all being done by avatars, you don't necessarily need to know that any of it's happening, right? It can all run in the background. And what's nice about that is like, let's say the avatars have a conversation and the avatars determine like, yeah, the budget's not there. Well, in real life, somebody might get all sort of hinky about that. They'd be like, well, why don't you want to talk to me even though I have no money? And it's like, because I'm a business person, not a charity, sorry. But if the avatars don't show that result, that person could come back 6 months later and be like, oh yeah, we raised money, let's chat now, and there's no sort of animosity or bad feeling. So that's kind of how I think about that stuff. It's really sort of the narrow casting efficiency feature. Do we have time for more, or is it lunch? Oh wow, lots of questions, awesome.
I would imagine one would air check 1,000 avatars out there talking to this if it were you.
Sorry, can you say that again?
How would you check errors?
Oh, errors, okay.
Because there's 1,000 people that you don't want to spend your time checking. There'd be a lot of things.
Well, so you could just do like random checks, right? So, right now when people do sort of like testing, they pull, let's say, if you're a factory, you don't check every single thing that goes through the factory. You check one of every 20 products to just make sure it's okay, and you sort of extrapolate out that the rest of the products are okay. So I imagine a report would be generated where you sort of can watch your avatar in real time for a little bit, and if they're like, oh, this person is saying exactly the wrong thing, then you can go in and kind of check it. Right? You wouldn't be watching hours and reams of conversation, that would make no sense, but you just do like a quality assurance check every so often to make sure your avatar is not out there like saying insane stuff.
Was it a dramatically different product? It's not a standardized widget. It's a rather unique conversation. And further, there's some things you could do in that way that are like systematic or repeated a lot, but then
Yeah.
further you go, it's just these kind of random things that happen.
Well, it's trained to get smarter and smarter, right? Like the algorithm is trained on your data to get smarter and smarter and better, and the more data you add to it, the better. But let's say, so one error that I could see happening with this is, like I have a very uniquely spelled first name. There's only a few other people with the spelling of my name out there, right? But potentially it could get that data confused, right? It could think Cortney Harding, the woman who's a wedding photographer in Minneapolis, you know, all of a sudden my avatar's talking about wedding photography, which I know nothing about. So kind of like correcting for that and getting the data to be smarter and smarter, I think is something that we'll have to do manually at first. Obviously, if your name is like John Smith, that's going to be more challenging. You're going to have to figure out a better way to sort of make sure it's your data and not somebody else's data. So it's not going to be perfect, but it is going to be the type of thing that you really, really train over time. Anyone else, or we?
Super interesting idea. I just have one wrinkle that I can't iron out in my mind. So
Okay.
you can think out loud about this. I'm thinking about all of this personal data that would go into the AI and how that would be an absolute nightmare if somebody hacked it. So what are your thoughts on keeping things secure?
Yeah, I mean, that is a huge issue, right? So that's going to be one of the things that has to get solved. And, you know, like you could sort of, so as you're sort of building this framework, you could figure out, okay, what data out there exists about me that I don't want included in this, right? Now, the problem is, you know, that data is already out there. So, you know, if somebody really wants to know like my social security number, I'm sure it's on the dark web somewhere, right? Whether that's in the metaverse or whether that's just on the dark web, I mean, it's still out there. So I think that's part of it. I think you could also sort of have, as you're building your avatar, have boxes for like, okay, I want things from YouTube associated with me, or TikTok, or Twitter, but I don't want, you know, this site or that site included, right? So I think you're just gonna have to have some sort of setup on the front end where you can exclude certain things. Now, like, it's gonna get corrupted at some point just because it will, because that's just how this stuff works. But again, I think that's where the quality control comes in, is every 20 conversations get sent to you and recorded, and you can go through and be like, oh no, this person's giving out my home address, go in the system and solve for that. Like there can be steps in place. It's not gonna be perfect, it's never gonna be perfect, and that's why like my credit card info is, I'm sure, on like 20 different dark websites, and fingers crossed that I don't get hacked or my account emptied. It just is what it is.
So much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me extrapolate all this stuff out. All right, thanks everyone.